So welcome to the Node.js package maintenance team meeting for the 15th of July, 2021. We'll follow the agenda that we have in the issue that was opened in the repo, which is issue 472. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements or anything like that that they'd like to share?
I guess I'll say that I saw a job posting for a Nearform that they are looking to hire a Node core developer. So if anybody listening wants to check that out, go to Nearform's careers and check it out.
Sounds good, thanks. Okay, let's move on then to the first issue tagged, which was community maintenance of actions setup node. I think, Dominique, last time you mentioned that you'd reached out to Miles, but that it might take a little while for, some sort of action or progress on that. Anything we should talk about this week on that one?
I did get a response. Thanks, Miles, if you're watching this. Yeah, I don't know how much of what's in these emails should I go with publicly just yet, but I mean, we started a discussion and we'll see if we can take it forward in some form, so in some medium. So yeah, it's moving forward. I'll give an update when there's more to update.
Should we take it off the agenda, do you think, for until you've got something? Or...
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, we can.
So no point me sort of asking every time if...
Yeah.
Okay, makes so sense. We'll remove from the agenda and you can add back whenever it makes sense. Okay. Okay, next steps, status and updates of next steps for PKGS Create. I know we talked about that last time, and I'm just looking to see if there's anything. I see John and Jordan, you've been talking about it a fair amount, right?
Yeah, all that came in the past hour, basically. But what I think I forgot to, I followed up with Wes after our last meeting, and him and I chatted, and what it came down to is basically momentum. I put some updates about that in the linked issue, but it's basically just momentum, time, whatnot. I personally went and started looking at it, and I had to wrap my head around the intent of it at first. And so I put an update in this thread a little bit about I just like what I think is so first off, I think that the create package JSON, I think that we've already knew that that's probably where the next steps for working on this will be. It's working on create package JSON, which is a repo that Wes has personally, which will be, there's also been talk about NPM maybe moving their npm init basically package to have it be supplanted and supported by this working group and this package. So yeah, it's basically just, it's looking for people to work on it. And for me, what I needed was a clear idea of what actually it was trying to solve. So I kind of linked to some of the things that have helped me figure it out a bit better.
I guess one thing is, have we moved the repo, or can we move the repo into the PKGS org?
The create package JSON is, Wes said he's willing to do that for sure.
Okay.
And also one of the takeaways that he mentioned too, specifically, was getting some commit bits to people in this group, or just people that want to contribute to that thing specifically, so he's not the blocker on a lot of it, because he hasn't had the time to devote to it, more or less. So
right,
he's the only one with a commit bit on that particular repo. So I can reach out to him on Twitter or something and see if he I think he has permissions. You guys would know better than me probably to move that repo into this org, and if he does, then I'd love to prod him to do that, basically.
I think so. And we also have this in the PKGS org, which is create.
Yep. So that's the imagined create is an imagined tool that would then be used to scaffold projects. I mean, Wes has big plans for it to scaffold all kinds of stuff to be a human. So create package JSON would be consumed, or would be a dependency of that. So,
right. Yeah. So the create is the overall one, but create package JSON is the very first. Yeah. So it would make sense to get that moved over in terms of visibility and making it a bit easier to, point people at and maybe create some small issues or whatever to say, what is the next step? So, okay. So Johnny, it sounded like you maybe volunteered to talk to Wes to see if we can move it over.
Yes, I will tweet him after this meeting. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about this project. I want to work on it too, but I think everybody has said that they're excited about it, but nobody's had the time to work on it yet. So
yeah, and I think if you're, if we get it moved over, and then it's like, even if you can help say, here's a few concrete things, I'm guessing we'll get more people jumping in, right?
Yep. I think the next steps on that is immediately getting it moved in, and then getting some stuff merged in over there. And I could probably try to follow. Once that happens, then I can post something about, hey, does anybody want to have a meeting just about this? Because we've had a lot of people that are interested, but I think everybody's looking for somebody to kind of be in charge or something. Not sure who that would be, but at the very least, we can get a meeting where people can try to get on the same page with it. So
I think it's like everybody's, from my perspective anyway, it's like if there was some organization that says, hey, here's a little thing you could do, it would be a lot easier to chime in versus like, okay, I have to go figure it all out, right, to get started.
That's the wall that I ran into. I was asking a bunch of what I think were implementation detail questions of myself, and without anybody to bounce them off. So,
right,
that's solvable. I like to work on that at some point. It's a cool thing to me. So,
okay,
but I'll contact Wes about it.
Okay,
about moving.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Anything else we should mention on that one before we move on? If not, the next one is 413, which is suggest a list of modules to help get support info. I don't think there's any update. I don't have any update on this one. Anybody else have anything they want to mention on that?
Let me click through to this one. I forget what that was even about specifically.
We've defined the support info, and we have the tool under PKGS support that helps you validate it. And this is around trying to get broader usage throughout the ecosystem. So like I know at Red Hat, we've added it to a number of our packages. Darcy was working on his side. And so it's kind of like, just working as we can to try and get more packages to have a support info, because the more that do, the more useful it gets and the more interesting it gets to build tools that look at that info and help, the consumers understand what the package owner is trying to communicate to them and what that means to them in terms of, their own business. Does that fill in the gap or?
Yeah, now I found the repo. I wasn't sure what the intent of that issue is, but now I understand. So
okay. So, okay, if there's no other updates, I think the next thing on the agenda then is the update from the OpenTelemetry. And I think John, you had followed up with them.
Yeah, I reached out. I was looking for something to work on. And I reached out to them after looking at, so for anyone that's not familiar, OpenTelemetry is a broad overarching project that has, it's creating a standard for tracing and metrics and logging, et cetera, amongst all the different APMs, application performance monitoring companies. It is the second most popular project in the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So there's different special interest groups for each language. There's a JavaScript one, there's a Python one, et cetera. It's this big overarching project, and it's pretty interesting stuff. It's got a lot of support from vendors and stuff. But I've been reaching out to the JS special interest group to try to see if I could contribute and whatnot. And it's a really well run, they've got the governance and the processes from the CNCF. So there's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But my follow-up essentially is that, I'm probably going to work on it. Sure, fine. But they weren't aware of this working group. So I met with some of the lead maintainers. There's three maintainers, explicit maintainers. And one of them, Daniel, him and I met, and he was like, he was excited about the working group and had some questions that he was like, I haven't known who to ask about, this particular package management stuff. He has some questions around peer dependencies and certain decisions that they're making with their, they have a whole bunch of different internal packages that are dependencies of the project, and they're trying to figure out, he had some some questions that basically I told him I don't have the answer to this, but if you open up an issue in the package maintenance repo, then you could probably get some people who definitely do know more about this than I do to give you some support, or at least a direction and a nudge in the right direction. So my point is to keep an eye out for that issue. He's been pretty swamped. So we talked just yesterday about this, and I told him, I know you're probably not going to get it in by the meeting today, but I'll let everybody know to kind of be on the lookout for it. I think it's a very impactful and very interesting project. And there's some Node Core contributors floating around doing contributions to various like vendor implementations of this. So they are working with some Node Core people, but they weren't aware of this working group, and they have, basic questions that a lot of maintainers have, like, I don't know how to structure documentation in a way that makes sense, which I know we don't probably have an answer for that, but I was getting some really good feedback from him about like, here's the problems and questions that maintaining a big, huge thing is bringing up, and I don't know who to go to for it. So yeah, hopefully he'll get a issue filed here, and maybe some people can help him with that. So.
Oh, that sounds good, because yeah, it'll be interesting to hear what those questions and concerns are. And did you get the sense that they're making good progress on the JavaScript implementation, or what?
Yeah, so that's been going on. I think the repos have existed for at least a year. Things are just starting to get stable. Most of it is all at version 0 still, but they're making a lot of progress for sure. And Daniel, the contributor that I spoke to directly, he's passionate about it, and he's really, really receptive and was really excited to to basically like have an exchange of information between this group and him, essentially, or their group too. So I think it could be a really good opportunity, specifically because they have so much, they've done a lot of the work already of having governance and having processes and having meetings. And there's also basic stuff that like, they record their meetings similar to how our working groups do, but their meetings aren't labeled on YouTube, so it makes it really, there's just all kinds of small things where I'm like, they could definitely, there's some conversation between at least the OpenJS Foundation and CNCF that could be really fruitful, I think, for these individual maintainers and stuff. So he luckily is also on the governance board, this particular individual, Daniel Dillon, I think, Dilliden. So, it would be cool if he could run that kind of stuff up the flagpole to get some feedback and whatnot, because it honestly made it extremely difficult to watch their meetings, is because they all were just labeled with the date they happened on. And there's like 5 different groups that meet on the same day. So it's almost impossible to find. But yeah, he's receptive and wants to talk to the group. So I'm just waiting for him to hopefully open up an issue or something. So
sounds good. Okay, I assume just as per the notes, it's the OpenTelemetry JS is the right repo.
Yep, I can drop a link if you're looking for it, to help you with the minutes to capture some of that stuff.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, because that's one of the things, is they have like so many different repos and whatnot, and there's a lot of packages going on over there. So I think that they would be a really interesting project to talk to, because I mean, this stuff's getting used too. Like, it's not even stable yet, but like there's a lot of use happening essentially. It's also it's a very interesting project because it's primarily being consumed by other package maintainers at these vendor specific companies. And as a result, as an end user, like a regular open source user, it's extremely overwhelming to try to get up to speed on it all. There's so many complex topics, and their documentation is they're admittedly lacking in docs, where it's basically the main consumers of the project are people who are paid to integrate that stuff into their employer's software. So they have a lot of typical needs and questions about like, how do we maintain examples across all of these different packages and repos and versions, and the different website the main website that I don't have access to, yada, yada. So I think it could be an interesting conversation to have for sure. It's also funny to me that it's like, man, yeah, if we got I wish you guys knew about this group. Well, we got to evangelize it.
Right. Well, yeah, sometimes it's one at a time, right? So that's a good that you connected with them.
Oh, yeah, cool. Got that.
Okay, that was the last item on the current agenda. Is there anything else that we should talk about this week? If not, I guess thank you everybody for taking the time, and we'll see everybody in GitHub and next time.